Hey there, how's it going? Fon here. Thanks for joining me today. And temporarily, my workshop today is the living room table, but that's okay. This is a relatively easy build. We're going to have a look at a PVC whistle or Fipple flute making. Okay. A traditional Irish whistle is going to look something more like this. It's approximately 13mm across. I'm going to be using my new favourite building material, which is 20mm PVC. You can get thick, heavy duty or thin PVC. The PVC I'll be using is 20mm outer and it's 1mm wall, so you've got 18mm inner. But there are thicker walls, but that's not what I'm using. I believe thinner is better. If you don't have access to a printer or the internet at the moment, I'm just going to quickly show you the sizings and spacings of these holes, just in case you're going to try and make your own whistle purely from looking at this video. So I'm just going to come up close to the camera, have a quick look here. This is a traditional D Irish whistle. I hope you can see that there. Hang on. But assuming you have access to the internet and a printer, you'd be better off going to something like Bracker Whistle and Flutes and use their whistle and flute hole calculator. Link in the description. Thank you, folks. It's going to look something like that. You input your key, traditional tuning, millimeters or inches, outer diameter, wall size, and the bore is the inner diameter. This measurement here is going to take you up to where the edge of the hole that you cut in the Fipple is, and this is your overall total length. Okay, couple of things about whistles and flutes. If I block off all these notes here, it gives this note. That's a D note. If I go like that, I've just effectively made that the end point of my whistle. Approximately, that's become the end point, and the note is higher. As I go like that, the note becomes higher again. So the shorter the length, the higher it is. Number of other points before we jump in and get started. Higher pitched whistles and flutes require thinner diameter tube, smaller diameter tube, and a shorter length. Lower pitched whistles and flutes require bigger diameter tube or pipe and a longer length. So here is, I think that's a G that I made by comparison with a D. And apparently the thinner wall is better for the sound. One other thing, again, link in the description. The physics of this gets quite complicated. We're not going to go into it today, but there's a whole Wikipedia page about the physics of whistles, and roughly what happens is in the Fipple, the air comes through this tube here and becomes a jet of air in there, which hits, I hope you can see this okay, a sharp point, an edge in there. The air then splits in two. Half of the air comes out and the other half splits off and gets a bunch of vortexes, or in plural vortices, formed, swirls of air. It's funny because my other favourite hobby is radio-controlled airplanes, and you get actually vortices forming at the tips of wings, so you get vortices in many different things from whistles to wingtips. Anywho, moving on. Link in the description about the physics if you're interested. The way I have chosen to build my whistles is two-part with a brass or copper joiner, and there are a couple of reasons for that. I'm learning, so I can work on that and that separately as I improve. I can also swap mouthpieces onto different flutes, different keys, and I can make new mouthpieces without having to start again from scratch all the time. What else? Okay, look, I think we are just about ready to move on. And just before we do, I actually have found 3 different methods on YouTube. Links in the descriptions, and thank you, folks. I'll show you my favourite method, but I will give links to the other methods. Okay, let's jump in. So, step 1 is to make the fipple or mouthpiece. Let's jump in on this. To start, you're going to cut yourself a piece of PVC piping. Well, this is the way I've figured out how to do it anyway. Cut yourself a piece of PVC piping 8 centimeters long. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2, get some tape and put tape on it until this 22mm spacer fits on, and mark when the spacer is slid on or the joiner has moved on halfway. Okay, make sure it's a nice snug fit. Okay, so here's a quick look at one that I made earlier. So here we have an 8 centimeter piece. Draw a center line. This point is 4 centimeters, 4 centimeters, 4 centimeters. This line to this line is a total of 8 millimeters, so that's 4 millimeters and that's 4 millimeters. Those 2 lines are 8 millimeters across. And we're going to take the hacksaw now and we're going to cut down there, and cut across there. So now you should have something that looks a bit like this. Needs a little bit of cleaning up with sandpaper. And I'm going to take a small file and a knife and I'm going to cut very carefully an edge here. I'm going to do it and then show you how it ends up. Hopefully I'll get it right. So hopefully a few minutes later you're going to end up with something that looks a bit like this. So roughly what I did was I used a file a bit like this, like that, and I used a file a bit like this to get the inside nice and smooth. Now some of the other vids on YouTube I've seen said to sharpen both sides, but more of them just say to sharpen the top side. So I've only sharpened the top side. Let me give you a decent look at that. And if anything, underdo it rather than overdo it. I found myself some wooden dowel which was roughly 20mm in diameter. I actually had to sand it down and I'm going to be putting that into there. And then once I've put that into there, like that, and made sure that it's snug, then I'm going to cut across like that. Okay? So now you should have something looking a bit like this. At the moment I'm finding good results with 8mm wide window by 6mm across. So in a little while we're going to make a cover top here, which is going to give us a little chute or duct for the hole, for the wind to go down, but not yet. Some people leave the wood flat across, but I'm going to cut this on an angle. See, I've already cut the wood. I'm going to cut this on an angle to make a nice comfortable mouthpiece like that. But you can leave it flush like that. So I'm just going to cut that. The top of this, so this is now looking like this. And I'll sand that off smooth later. The top of this is roughly 3.4 centimeters long, 34 millimeters. So I've cut this piece to the same length, roughly, because I'm going to cut it down more accurately later. Measure twice, cut once, but you can take away material, you can't add it. So if anything, I always cut a slight bit big, because I can sand and cut stuff smaller, but once you've gone too small, you can't go bigger. So I always go a millimeter big. So I've gone sort of 34 instead of 33. Then cut approximately 2 lines 8 millimeters apart, and you'll see why in a little while that it doesn't have to be too utterly accurate, that bit. You'll see why in a moment. Now you should have something looking quite like that. I've sanded that slightly. This is going to be a kind of a sleeve that clips on. One second, something like this. Okay, and then you can slide it on, and that is now gives us a little duct, if you can see it. Your air is going to enter there, and come out of a tiny little slot there. It's very high pitched because it's very short. When it gets a longer tube in it, it's going to go lower. I'm now just going to cut. Do you see this angle here? I'm going to draw on and cut around that. I'm not going to be too ferociously super accurate because I'm going to sand it all down more at the end. And another little point is that depending on where the outer sheath and the inner block are, you'll get different results. I'm finding myself that 8mm across by 6mm works very nicely, but you might find, you know, you want a bigger or a smaller gap in either direction. Experiment yourself. Try moving that forwards and backwards. There is a sweet spot, but as far as I can see at the moment, about 8 by 6 is a sweet spot, and those two flush with each other. Et voila! At the end, I'm going to sand that and do a couple of little jobs on it. But for now, that's enough for us to move on to the next stage. The next stage is to get some tape and cut it thin. If your couplers are anything like mine, that's 3 centimeters or 30mm. So you're going to want to cut your tape into strips 1.5 centimeters across like that, and wrap them on, so it's going to end up looking something like that. But I'm going to have to do this on this as well now. So you should now have one piece that looks like this, and I've marked 1.5 centimeters there. My 22mm coupler or joiner piece, and that's a good snug fit now. And I've gotten a second piece which is at least 26 centimeters long, at least in the case of a sea whistle. Go and get your whistling hole flute calculator and find out your length yourself. But in this case, and it's going to be subtly different because I've designed this to be 8 centimeters. So in the case of my version of a sea whistle, basically what you're going to do is you're going to put it in and you're going to blow on it, and using a guitar or a electronic tuner, you're going to find out what note it's blowing, and you're going to cut it shorter and shorter and shorter until you hit the note that you're looking for. It's going to go higher and higher. So in the case of this here, to do a sea whistle, I cut it to about 30 centimeters, and in the end I actually had to cut it down to 25.5 centimeters in the case of a sea whistle. Now, just for comparison against this sheet here, from the very end to the 29.5 is where the edge, the sharp edge is, 29.5, and by comparison with this, they're saying 291, but I'm going to follow this anyway because I know that this is now blowing a C. It's got no holes in it yet. So I'm going to start drilling my whistle shortly. There are the markings. Couple of quick points. I don't have all the weird and wonderful drill bit sizes that I mentioned there. But if anything, I'm going to go small because I can make the holes bigger afterwards, but I can't make them smaller. Also, when it comes to tuning the holes or repositioning them later, basically what it is as the tube goes shorter, in other words, if the hole is drilled to come slightly closer to you, the note will go sharper. Also, I just saw somebody else on another video saying that always start your tuning of your holes from this end, because like an open hole here is going to slightly affect, let's say you've got 3 fingers on. Open holes here are going to slightly affect that, so you don't start your tuning from here, you start there. And when I say tuning, I mean making the holes bigger or moving them more this way to make the note sharper. Okay, so let's get drilling. So here we are a few minutes later, and just for starters, I drilled all 6mm holes. And I found that the last whistle I built in D, the last 2 notes were quite flat, so I moved those 2 holes 1mm further that way. I'm now going to, it's not quite correct, but it's, here you go, have a listen, it's not correct yet. So it's like a bunch of the notes are a bit flat and need to either be embiggened, as Lisa Simpson calls it, or either moved that way or made bigger to make the note sharper. So I'm going to get onto that, starting with the first note, Do, Re. Obviously looking for Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do from a C. So that's slightly flat. Let's either embiggen that or bring it slightly this way. Quick little update. I've made this hole 8 mil. I've got 6 mil and 8 mil bits with me today. So, and if needed, I've got this circular file. So just making that from a 6 mil to an 8 mil hole has improved the tuning dramatically. So we're looking for Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol in the key of C. That's just about right now. So I'm very, very pleased with that. It's close enough that I'm going to move on to the next hole. That's quite flat. Shocking stuff. Here is a nice working completed whistle. Very pleased with this. If you have a go yourself, don't give up. I did my first whistle about 2 weeks ago and it was breathy and didn't really work properly at all. For the tuning, what I found was that I made the holes bigger, the notes went sharper. Some of them I was able to leave small. I'm going to leave links in the descriptions to a video about one of the makers on YouTube talking about the small holes and the big holes, and that basically what whistle makers are aiming at is getting 6 equilaterally placed, easy to place your fingers on holes, and that depending on if the hole is bigger or smaller, you can move more that way or that way. I'm not an expert, so I'll just share a video which mentions it in passing. Okay. What else? Just before I play you a tune to finish, I'm just going to quickly show you there are a couple of other methods to get a similar result, though I'm very pleased with that. A couple of similar things. Look, one is this method of Fipple. So watch, I'm going to deconstruct this in front of your eyes. Hang on. Watch, look. So it's got the same end plate, but there's no 45-degree angle cut. There's a wooden plug. I put tape on it to make it fit snug. Do you see that? So the air goes in there, it comes up and hits this outer sleeve, goes through the little tube and then hits your edge there. So that's another way to do it, okay? And that has that style of a mouthpiece. So that's one way, link in the description. The other way is called an Exo Fipple or an outer Fipple. I'm about to deconstruct this for you. 1 second now. Can you see that? Watch. Now I just put tape on this, but obviously if you were really making it for real, you could, glue stuff into place, use stronger tape and maybe glue the tape into position or whatever method you're using yourself. But watch, look. So what they did here was more tubing cut from the same stuff. There's a circular hole which has been sharpened there, and a piece of tubing cut from the same stuff which fits on like that. Okay, and that is how you make your Exo Fipple. Okay, I actually heated that slightly and gave it more of a curve because I was finding it was fitting a bit flat and there wasn't much air going through. So I heated it and gave it slightly more of a curve. But there you go, that's the basis of how you make an Exo Fipple. Okay. Hi again, so final update to the flute and whistle videos. A Fipple is a device which directs the jet of air for you, whereas a flute you have to do it with your mouth. So I've looked at some other videos, link in the description, thank you guys. And if you want to make a flute mouthpiece, it looks something a bit like this. So it's a kind of an oval shape or an elongated circle, whatever you want to call it, kind of an oval. And you get a small piece of sandpaper rolled up, or if you have a better file set than a small file. And assuming we're blowing in from this side, you sand it on an angle a bit like that to make the inside sharp there. Okay, roughly. Then you get a wooden block and put it in this end so that it's roughly 1.5 centimeters from the end. And again, this is 8 centimeters long, and the start of this window hole is 4 centimeters. So there to there is 4 centimeters, and that's 8 centimeters. And there's a block which is roughly 1.5 centimeters away up to its end point there. And then, if you know how to play the flute, which I don't, I'll try to get a sound now. I get a sound some of the time, something like this. So look, the problem is I can't really play the flute, but if I could, and you know, Google a few other YouTube videos about how to make a flute mouthpiece, but roughly that's how you do the 4th style of mouthpiece or fipple. So thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed that, and best of luck on your own projects, whatever they are. I'm now going to attempt the sailor's hornpipe, but don't forget I'm a guitarist really, not a whistle player. If you enjoyed that, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe or share. Cheers. Here we go, fingers crossed.